Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Japan protests South Korean court ruling on colonial-era workers. Nikki Haley was asked what caused the Civil War. She made no mention of slavery. Small business owner lands $1 billion prize after the West's exodus from Russia. North Korea's Kim wants to accelerate war preparations. Veteran from Madeira was deported 17 years ago. Wednesday he was allowed to be with family. Japan protests South Korean court ruling on colonial-era workers. Bloomberg. Japan's foreign ministry has summoned a senior diplomat from the South Korean embassy in Tokyo to protest a Supreme Court ruling that Japanese companies should pay compensation to Koreans who were conscripted to work for the firms during Japan's colonial occupation. The court's ruling against Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and Hitachi Zosen on Thursday is seen as a violation of a 1965 treaty between Japan and South Korea. Japan argues that all claims related to the conscription of Korean workers were settled by the treaty, which was accompanied by financial aid. South Korean court rulings since 2018 have said that some workers were not properly compensated for their suffering. Japan has called for compensation to be paid by a fund established by South Korea. Nikki Haley was asked what caused the Civil War. She made no mention of slavery. Washington Post. Nikki Haley, former UN ambassador and South Carolina governor, responded to a question about the cause of the Civil War without mentioning slavery, an omission that prompted surprise from her questioner and criticism from others. Haley had been campaigning in New Hampshire when an audience member asked her what had caused the Civil War. She responded that it was about how the government was going to run. When the audience member pointed out that she hadn't mentioned slavery, she asked him what he wanted her to say about it. The man declined to share his name and said he had asked the question because he had seen Haley answer it when she was running for governor of South Carolina and was curious if her response would be the same in New Hampshire. Scholars agree that a dispute over slavery was central to causing the Civil War. President Biden weighed in on social media, pointing out that the war was, in fact, about slavery. A small business owner lands $1 billion prize after the West's exodus from Russia. Bloomberg. Alexei Segal, the owner of Arnest Group, has become one of the top beneficiaries of the exodus of international businesses from Russia following President Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Arnest's newly acquired assets are worth $1 billion. In the last 18 months, Arnest has purchased the assets of Oriflame, Ball Corp's unit in Russia and Heineken's Russian operations. North Korea's Kim wants to accelerate war preparations. Deutsche Welle. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has called on his party to accelerate war preparations, including its nuclear program, in response to perceived confrontational actions by the U.S. Kim made the comments at the ongoing year-end Workers' Party meeting, where he is expected to announce major policy decisions for 2024. Experts believe North Korea will unveil a plan to strengthen its nuclear attack capability and expand cooperation with Russia and China. The move suggests that North Korea will continue weapons tests to modernize its nuclear arsenal, but some experts speculate that Kim hopes to use the bolstered arsenal as leverage in future diplomacy with the U.S. Veteran from Madeira was deported 17 years ago. Wednesday he was allowed to be with family. Yahoo! Hector Lopez Guillen, a U.S. Army veteran who was deported to Mexico more than 17 years ago, has returned permanently to California after receiving a humanitarian permit to reunite with his family. Lopez is the 96th deported veteran to return to the United States through the administration's humanitarian pardon and parole program to reunify military members with their families. Lopez, who has been infected with COVID-19 20 times since 2020, said he does not know how he survived. Led by Karen Drones, Virginia Tech runs all over Tulane in Military Bowl. Washington Post. Virginia Tech's rushing attack dominated the playing field despite the wet conditions at the Military Bowl, leading the team to a 41-20 victory over Tulane. Quarterback Karen Drones ran for 176 yards, setting a program bowl record, while Bashal Tutin added 136 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. The Hokies amassed 453 yards, with 362 of them on the ground. The win gave Virginia Tech their first winning season since 2019 and their first bowl victory since 2016. Tulane fell to 11-3 in their bowl debut. With funds running out, U.S. sends more weapons to Ukraine. Washington Post. The Biden administration has announced a new weapons package for Ukraine, which could be the final consignment from U.S. stockpiles unless Congress approves new funding for Kyiv's battle against Russia. The $250 million package includes artillery shells, air defense equipment, anti-aircraft and anti-tank missiles, and small arms ammunition. The announcement highlights Biden's failure to convince skeptical members of Congress that U.S. interests lie in ensuring Moscow cannot prevail in the war. Officials have suggested that this weapons package, known as a drawdown from Pentagon inventories, was the last one they could make with existing funds. How the watermelon emoji got tied up with the Israel-Hamas war. The Sydney Morning Herald. Watermelons are being used as a symbol of solidarity with Palestinians in the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. The fruit is being painted on cardboard at protests and used in display names and emojis on social media. Watermelons are grown in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank and share the same colors as the Palestinian flag. The fruit has been used as a symbol of identity and resistance by Palestinians for many years. The watermelon symbol has become more widespread during the current conflict and is used as a way to show support without being censored on social media platforms. Haley declines to say slavery was cause of civil war. Yahoo! Nikki Haley, former U.S. ambassador to the UN, has suggested that the Civil War was caused by the role of government, rather than slavery. Speaking at a town hall event in New Hampshire, Haley said that the conflict was about how government was going to run and the freedoms and what people could and couldn't do. When a voter challenged her for not mentioning slavery, Haley asked, "What do you want me to say about slavery?" The Civil War was fought predominantly over the South's desire to preserve slavery. Israel warns that time for diplomacy with Lebanon is running out. New York Times. As Israel continues to bomb targets in Gaza, a member of Israel's war cabinet, Benny Gantz, has threatened action on a second front, along the border with Lebanon. Gantz has said that if the world and the Lebanese government do not act to stop Hezbollah from firing rockets into Israel, then the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, will take action. This has raised the threat of a wider war, as the US and its allies have been concerned about Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis in Yemen launching attacks towards Israel. Israel's military has said that its northern command is in a state of very high readiness, and its chief of staff has said the military needs to be prepared to strike if required. Tensions have risen even higher after Iran accused Israel of killing a senior advisor to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps in a missile strike in Syria. There have been concerns that tit-for-tat attacks in the region could escalate into a larger, regional fight. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 Degrees world, bringing you another round of news updates. Let's dive right in. First up, we have Japan protesting a South Korean court ruling on compensating colonial-era workers. It seems like tensions between these two countries just won't let up. Japan argues that the issue was settled by a treaty in 1965, but South Korean courts have ruled that some workers were not properly compensated. It's a sticky situation, and both sides are digging in their heels. Next, we have former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley making waves by not mentioning slavery as the cause of the Civil War. I guess she missed that page in the history books. But don't worry, President Biden quickly chimed in to remind everyone that, yes, slavery was indeed the central issue. Sometimes, it's best not to forget the most important part of the story. Moving on, a small business owner in Russia is reaping the benefits of the West's exodus. Alexei Segal has made a fortune as international businesses flee Russia following President Putin's actions in Ukraine. Talk about being in the right place at the right time. I guess it pays to be the last one standing. In North Korea, Kim Jong-un wants to accelerate war preparations. Now, I know what you're thinking, who wouldn't want to speed up their war preparations? But let's hope this is just a political move and not a sign of impending conflict. North Korea's nuclear program is always a cause for concern, but it seems like Kim wants to use it as leverage in future diplomacy with the US. Let's hope cooler heads prevail. In some heartwarming news, a US Army veteran who was deported to Mexico 17 years ago has finally been allowed to return to California to be with his family. Hector Lopez Guillen is the 96th deported veteran to benefit from the administration's humanitarian pardon and parole program. It's a reminder that sometimes, justice can be served, even if it takes a while. And in sports, Virginia Tech ran all over Tulane in the Military Bowl. Quarterback Karen Drones set a program bowl record with 176 rushing yards, leading his team to a decisive victory. It's always great to see a team end their season on a high note, especially after a long drought of wins. Lastly, the US is sending more weapons to Ukraine as funds run out. The Biden administration has announced a new weapons package, but it might be the last one unless Congress approves new funding. It's a reminder that diplomacy doesn't always come cheap, and sometimes, you need some firepower to make your point. Now, my friends, it's time for your thoughts. What do you make of these news stories? Do you have any burning questions for me? Let the discussion begin. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6 Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.